Good morning, everyone. Always good to be here with you.
Recording in progress.
Wonderful, wonderful to have you.
And before I dive in, I'm just going to bring you up to date on my life because I know that's what you're all interested in. So, uh, I had the occasion to visit one of my doctors a few weeks ago, and he said, Glenn, you could probably use a little more exercise. You're not working as hard as you used to, and it's starting to creep up on you. And so I thought, well, that's true. And I'm only bringing this up because, spirit is very susceptible to suggestion when we believe something. And so I believe I need exercise, and I also believe I really don't enjoy exercise. And it's hot out, and I don't like being out in the heat. So, spirit, you need to work with me here and figure out a solution to this problem. So, I had the opportunity to take a quick trip back to my family home in Kansas, which meant for a changing planes in Dallas. So my daughter and I jumped on the plane, and well, first of all, we didn't get up for the very early flight. We had to fly standby, so we thought we'll take the second flight because it has more seats available. And it turned out that the first flight was canceled, which meant there were an awful lot of people that had to be on that second flight. But we managed to get on it. And we got to Dallas. And the Midwest had enjoyed a really vicious bout of thunderstorms the previous day, the previous night, and that morning. And Dallas is a major hub for our airline, so none of the planes they were expecting to be in Dallas were in Dallas. They were scattered around the country looking for safe places to land. So consequently, we wound up, my daughter and I, on a 34-hour tour of the Dallas Fort Worth Airport and got plenty of exercise because we were going from Gate 1 and Terminal A to Gate 19 and Terminal D, back to Terminal B, back to Terminal C, back to Terminal A, and finally discovered that there was no way we were going to get to where we were going in the time frame we needed to get there. So we started looking for a way to get back to Florida, which took us back to Terminal D, which then sent us back to Terminal A. I was getting exercise, boys and girls, and I wasn't enjoying it. But at least I was in a nice air-conditioned airport, and they do have a little train that runs around, so that was fun.
That's right.
But my watch, which tracks all of this stuff, chimed in finally and said, "You have exercised more in the last 24 hours than you ever have in your life." And I thought, well, that's just a wonderful way for spirit to grab me by the collar and give me what I needed in a way that I really could not have imagined under any circumstances. So I'm just
Great sense of humor, I can tell you.
I am sharing this with you to just remind you that we plant the seed and spirit grows the crop, and we have just got to pay attention and realize that spirit is always working on what we need.
Always, always, always.
Because
Yep.
quite frankly, I could have had a miserable, miserable experience that day and a half. But in reality, I got to spend a very unique experience with my grown daughter. And I mean, we even contemplated, listen, you got to be back at school on Monday morning. Let's just fly to Tampa, and I'll find my way home from there. And so that was a possibility. And then, well, we did finally wind up being able to come back to, I think it was Miami. It might have been Fort Lauderdale. Tell you the truth, I don't remember where we flew into at this point. I just know we finally got here.
Got here. Well,
And then I slept for 24 hours because I'd only slept for a few hours on the floor in the airport. So,
wow.
anyway, keep your eyes open, be alert for what Spirit's doing for you, and understand it's a good idea to be careful what you ask for sometimes.
Yes, absolutely.
So
Some
anyway,
that we have some rude awakenings.
absolutely, absolutely. And
Yeah,
also, you know what? Life is a gas.
it is.
It is only our trying to define it within our solid appearances that leads us into confusion and distorted thinking. If I had been locked into feeling that I had to be at a certain place at a certain time, I could not have enjoyed myself. You know, the largest planets in our solar system, and probably the largest planets we observe since we're actually seeing them outside of our solar system now, are mostly the gas giants. Saturn, Jupiter. There's not a lot of solid out there. It's mostly gas. But you know, if you brought all that gas within our orbit here on Earth, it would probably burn off. It would just sublimate out into space, and there would be little or nothing left. They just like so much dry ice on a Florida picnic table, they'd be gone.
Mm.
So, you know, thinking of life as a gas allows us to see more clearly how everything we think is true is more truly in flux. Now, if we had polarized lenses that might help us see black and white, but remove the filter and we see the individual dots are really a cloud or murmuration of dots, both black and white, randomly dispersed. When seen without the polarizing filter, we see ever shifting shades of gray. To the uninitiated, there's nothing more than a wild and foreboding forest at hand, lions, tigers, and bears. But to the botanist or zoologist, there lies a cornucopia of miracles, each more fantastic than the last. Oh my. Thinking of life as a gas makes it easier to come to grips with holding two unlike thoughts in our minds at the same time. Nikki Giovanni, an American poet and activist, writes, "I think life is cotton candy on a rainy day. It is very delicate. True cotton candy is sugar, color, and air, and it melts very quickly. That's the metaphor. It can't be preserved. It can't be put aside. It can't be banked. It has to be fully experienced, like life." Now, also, cotton candy, if you've ever watched it being made, is also just one continuous thread of material, so sticky and so randomly intermixed that it is impossible to unravel. Now, think of that as the thoughts in our head. And like our thinking, it is at once a delightful treat and capable of becoming a sticky mess with little or no effort at all. And this too helps explain our often incongruous thinking. Example. Generally, we are socially agreed hurting other people should be avoided. Yet almost everyone agrees that it is acceptable to hurt someone in self-defense. For the sake of this example, I'm not even considering the fringes that are just fine with hurting others and on one end, and those who are just too good to be true on the other end. But here we see the same act condemned and encouraged simultaneously, thus opening ourselves up to argument to develop a common understanding of how much pain we can inflict in the name of self-defense, or how much pain justifies self-defense in the first place. Opinions may vary. Had we stuck with just avoid hurting others, the argument would not be necessary. Spirit always takes the simplest path. Spirit is always love. If we stick with spirit, we always choose avoid hurting others. And then we remain conflict free. Actually, in spirit, it's even more basic. It's just avoid hurting. I break it down thus because in spirit, we also avoid hurting ourselves. Why? It's that love thing again. When we focus on love, latex and leather enthusiast aside, hurting is not part of the picture. So when we find ourselves enmeshed in one of life's cotton candy moments, our salvation is our relationship with Spirit. With Spirit as our anchor, we can always default back to love regardless of what sticky mess our choices have embroiled us in. Remembering that life is a gas, we can allow ourselves to be fluid with our thinking, not enslaved by it. Richard Rohr, an American priest and writer, says when people say we want justice, they normally mean that bad deeds should be punished or they want vengeance. But Jesus says that's simply not the case with God. God's justice, he writes, is total, steadfast love. Total, unconditional giving of love. Spirit and God are the same thing. Spirit knows only unconditional giving love. The teacher known as Jesus back in the day taught us to turn the other cheek. The teacher Jesus, however, transcended our transactional society. In a transactional society, we expect rewards for our labors and demand consequences for those who trespass against us, using the biblical term. We even get upset if a coworker is paid the same as us when we think they don't work as hard as we do. But don't let me pull on that thread here today. That's a whole other rabbit hole we may explore one day down the road. Jesus sustained his unity with Spirit, illustrating how we can choose to de-escalate conflict if our belief is sufficiently developed. And Jesus understood the price for transcending our transactional natures and accepted it graciously because his steadfast unity with Spirit offered no other possibility. The spiritual unity experienced by Jesus demanded he feel only love, and therefore could only offer a plea that his oppressors be forgiven, be allowed to release their fear and anger so their remaining days would not be mired in guilt for their choices that day. You know, most combat veterans cite the valor of the people they served with, but very few are eager to blow their own horn. Horrible deeds, honorable people. Life is a gas, a murmuration of opposing ideas coexisting simultaneously. L.R. Noss, author and social justice activist, writes, "Do not be dismayed by the brokenness of the world. All things break, and all things can be mended. Not with time, as they say, but with intention. So go, love intentionally, extravagantly, unconditionally. The broken world waits in darkness for the light that is you." We may be moved to acts of vengeance, or more accurately, we may choose to enact vengeance, but that is succumbing to our evolving common consciousness, not truly aligning with Spirit. We can recognize misalignment and act in alignment without causing an irreversible disturbance in the space-time continuum. As enlightened being, and I know everyone here is traveling an enlightened path, we are self-motivated to bend the common consciousness toward completing its evolutionary circle, rejoining the origin point of uncontaminated spiritual truth. Ram Dass quoted as saying, "I notice how many angry people there are at peace rallies. Social action arouses righteousness, but righteous anger can close your heart. If I want to be free more than I want to be right, I have to let go of righteousness. For social action to be done with love, the spiritual work has to come first." Righteousness can blind us when we read it as right is us. When we strike out in a righteous rage, we are inclined to justify whatever pain we inflict as earned and deserved. When we believe inflicting pain is the only way to end our pain, the only commonality is pain. Certainly in our transactional world, there are times when resistance, even retaliation, can be justified, but at what cost? These are human choices. Spirit always defaults to love. The teacher Jesus was willing to die with love in his heart rather than sacrifice his soul, his unity with Spirit. They say the devil is after our souls. The devil wants to rip us away from our spiritual anchor, casting us adrift in a world of endless consequences with no path back. Traditional religions say this accounting will be in the next life. I say it's in this life. And I say every time we choose to step away from our spiritual unity, we tear off a piece of our soul and give it away. These are those front porch moments where we sit and stare off into the distance, lamenting choices we simply cannot change. Moments our families know to leave us alone. In these moments of thoughtfulness lies our window of opportunity. These are meditative moments. And in meditative moments, we are open to solutions. Our moment of reflection when we reach out and reconnect to our unity, because Spirit has not abandoned us, but simply allowed us to let go and free fall, because that was our choice in the moment. Life is a gas where we can despair in one moment and reach out in the next, because Spirit is still there to envelop us again as quickly as we choose to embrace it. That shred of soul we feared lost forever was simply suspended there, out of sight, waiting for us to reclaim it and make ourselves whole. The science of mind teaching reveals our true unity is never threatened or lost, but recognizes our human passions may sometimes slam us rather abruptly into the guardrails along our enlightenment path. Carolyn Miss, writing in Intimate Conversations with the Divine, said, "Legislation will not force a glacier to stop melting. We need to change our lifestyles." In this country, and probably throughout the world, we kind of run the gamut of expecting our government to solve all of our problems to simply wanting our government to go away and leave us alone. Most of us fall somewhere near the mid-range of that bell curve, recognizing the value of combined efforts while still celebrating our individualities. And where our spiritual unity is involved, it really is an inside job. No government can, no government edict can force us to make better choices. No organized religion is faultless, and I include the science of mind. That's why we are open at the top, according to Ernest Holmes, our founder. So, legislative morality is simply a recipe for disaster. Self recognition, on the other hand, accepting responsibility for our own experiences and understanding our unity and its subsequent empowerment, that can save a soul, a city, a state, and even a planet. Not that the planet needs saving. It will be fine with or without us. But for the foreseeable future, we kind of need it. So, just saying. We need to free ourselves from the enslavement of linear thinking. Cassandra Duffy, a physician and author, writes, "The beauty of standing up for your rights is that others see you standing and they stand up as well. Those who want to keep us down by fomenting fear and anger, those who insist their interpretation of God gives them the right to enslave others, those who are simply so spiritually disjointed they flow aimlessly with whatever river of thought they fall into, are not in alignment or unity with Spirit. But Spirit has not abandoned them, so let them see us stand. They'll soon learn we know the way." In 1 Corinthians it says, "The human body has many parts, but the many parts make up one whole body. So it is with the body of Christ. Some of us are Jews, some are Gentiles, some are slaves, and some are free, but we have all been baptized into one body by one Spirit, and we all share the same Spirit." Life is a gas. Enjoy the freedom to expand, compress, assume any shape, and change in an instant. As Amelia Earhart said, there is more to life than being a passenger. Thank you for your attention.
So much more to life. So much more. Thank you, Reverend Glenn. Thank you. Thank you.